I logged the boarding at 0411, ship's time, and I wanted understood that I wrote the report wrong on purpose, before I had even decided to do it. Some decisions get made by your hands before your head signs off. The freighter was called the Calder's Reach. It had gone quiet 6 hours before my hailing frequency got an answer not from the bridge but from a transponder loop, 3 words on repeat. Cargo intact, cargo intact, cargo intact. Nobody runs a loop like that out past the Vey belt unless they want you to think there's nothing aboard worth a closer look. I went in anyway. That's the job. Warden's badge doesn't come with a clause that says skip the ones that smell wrong. The courier was dead at the helm, slumped against a console that was still warm. Wanted 3 systems over for cargo running, not drugs, not ore, the kind of cargo that doesn't show up on a manifest because it isn't supposed to exist. I'd read his file on the way out. Brask oil, 40 years moving things that other people had decided were property. I felt nothing for him. I still don't. What I felt was the air change when I found the bulkhead that wasn't structural. It was a clean weld, better than the rest of that wreck deserved, and it didn't match the deck plan on my slate. I cut it open with the boarding torch and found a space the size of a footlocker, lined with salvaged insulation, and a child folded into it like something that had practiced folding herself small. Ilvex by the ridges along her throat, 2 of them, where a human has 1 voice box. Skin the gray-blue of deep water under cloud. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch back from the light, either. She watched me with an attention that had nothing soft in it, the kind of watching you learn when flinching has never once made anything better. I crouched down because standing over her felt like a mistake my body understood before I did. I said my name. I don't know how much of it carried Ilvex here through the ridges as much as the ears. My translator earpiece told me later, more vibration than sound. But she reached out 1 hand and touched 2 fingers to my wrist, light as a question, and waited to see what I'd do about it. I didn't do anything. That was the right answer. Her shoulders came down a fraction of an inch, and I understood I'd just been tested and passed. She came out of the bulkhead on her own legs, which mattered to me more than I expected it to. I didn't lift her. I held a hand at the level she could reach if she wanted it, and after a long moment she took it, and we stood there in a dead man's cargo hold while the Reach groaned around us like something settling into its own grave. Up close I could see the faint pulse along her throat ridges, slow and even, not fear fast, just the rhythm her species runs on. My earpiece told me later, a resting cadence built for patience in places that never offer much. She'd learned to fold herself into a footlocker and breathe like that's normal. I didn't ask what taught her. Standing orders were clear. Seize cargo, recover or confirm the courier, transmit the manifest, hold position for retrieval. I had a dead trafficker and undeclared cargo that turned out to be a person. The manifest had columns for ore, for parts, for live specimens, for 41 kinds of contraband. None of them were built for an undocumented child who'd done nothing but exist in the wrong man's cargo hold. And I was not going to invent one that fed her into a system meant to process property. So I lied. I logged the hold as breached and the cargo as lost to vacuum during the boarding, plausible, on a wreck that ugly, and nobody back at the station was eager to fly out and verify a smuggler's empty footlocker. I filed it myself, under my own authorization code, and I sat with her in the dark while the transmission went out, because once it was sent there was no taking it back, and I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to look away while I did it. She didn't have words I understood yet, not that day, but she pressed those 2 fingers to my wrist again when the confirmation chime came back, and I understood that one fine. I started calling her Sail, because it was the closest sound to what she gave herself when I asked, and because a person needs a name that's hers, not a case number. The 3 days that followed were the strangest piece I've ever worked through. I had a wrecked hyperdrive to nurse and a hull integrity report to falsify in 12 separate places, and Sail had decided, somewhere in the first 6 hours, that wherever I went on that ship, she was going to be within arm's reach of it. She sat cross-legged on a crate while I rewired the drive housing and watched my hands the way you'd watch a tide come in, not bored, not afraid, just patient, cataloging. When I finally got the engine to hold a stable burn, she made a sound low in her throat ridges that the earpiece couldn't translate into a word, but I didn't need a word. I'd made plenty of crews cheer over the years. None of it had ever landed the way that sound did. She ate from my ration kit without complaint and slept in 4-hour stretches with one hand fisted in the hem of my jacket, and twice I woke to find her awake first, sitting up, watching the corridor hatch like she expected it to open on something she already knew the shape of. She was right both times, to be careful. She was wrong about exactly when. 3 days later, while I was still running diagnostics on a hyperdrive that had taken worse damage than the hull let on, a second ship matched our drift. Bounty crew, I knew the cut of their boarding pattern before they ever hailed me, tight and patient, the kind that's done this 100 times and lost interest in being polite about it. Their lead, a woman named Hode with a voice like gravel poured slow, told me they weren't here for the courier. The courier's debts were paid in full the day he died. They were here for what he'd been running. Said it like that, what he'd been running like sail was still cargo in their mouths. I told her the cargo was lost to vacuum, exactly as filed. Hode said she'd read that report and didn't believe a word of it, and that she had a buyer who'd pay enough to make disbelief profitable. There's a kind of quiet that comes over me right before I stop negotiating. My crew used to say they could hear it happen, like a switch going dark instead of going off. I felt it now, standing in the access corridor with Sale's hand wrapped around 2 of my fingers behind me, and I let Hode hear it in my voice when I told her the manifest stood, and that she could turn her ship around, or she could find out exactly how thorough the vacuum had been. She didn't turn around first. Her people came through the ramp anyway, betting I was bluffing about a position I couldn't actually hold alone. I want to be honest about what happened next. It was short, and it was not gentle, and none of it touched Sale, because I had put 6 meters of hull and a sealed hatch between her and anything that corridor was about to become. When it was over, Hode's crew left the way bounty crews leave when the math stops working in their favor fast, and without their dignity, and without my cargo. I didn't enjoy it. I want that on record too, for whatever a record like this is worth. I did it the way you do necessary things, with my teeth set and my hands steady, and I checked on Sale the second the hatch cycled, because that was the only part of the whole exchange that mattered to me. 17 years sit between that boarding and this telling. Sale calls me something now that doesn't translate clean into any human word, but the Warden Corps has a term for it on the paperwork, sponsor of record, and I signed that one honestly, in my own name, in full daylight, with nothing to hide. She runs cargo lanes of her own these days, legal ones, and she still touches 2 fingers to my wrist when she walks through my door. The same question she asked me in that footlocker, and I still answer it the same way. The official record on the Calder's Reach says cargo lost to vacuum, courier deceased, case closed. I filed it. I'd file it again tomorrow, word for word, without 1 hour of regret. Some lies are the truest thing a person ever signs their name to, and I have never once lost sleep over that one.